So we'll start this morning. We can go to the agenda, the next slide there. We'll start this morning with an overview of CERF, what we have learned so far, and some steps that have been taken to prepare for this opportunity. We are looking at this process in 3 steps. One is to stay informed, 2 is to get ready, and 3 is to apply for the grant. Originally, there were some CERF timelines and deadlines, and those were extended. So now we have more time to, as we talked about the steps, get ready and to apply. So after the CERF overview, we will divide into breakout groups and ask for your input on the planning and outreach process. We will ask each group to report on their conversations, and then we will have time for question and answers after the breakouts. And we ask that you please submit your questions via the chat platform prior to the question and answer session. So at any point in time that you have a question and you're ready, please feel free to do that. And so now after that brief introduction, I will now turn this over to Shalini, who will give us an overview of the Community Economic and Resilience Fund. Shalini?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Roque. So I'm so pleased to connect with you all in this conversation. My name is Shalini Vachala, and I'm the executive director of a new nonprofit in San Diego County called the San Diego Regional Policy and Innovation Center, or a PIC as we're known. And I've been describing our work as focused on the things that are everybody's problem, but no one's full-time job. And so we play a connective tissue function in the San Diego region and are so pleased to be working with Roque and the team at Imperial Valley Wellness Foundation on the CERF opportunity. So what is CERF? CERF is a major new grant program that's being offered by the state of California. The aim of this grant is to promote a recovery from COVID-19 with a real focus on economic diversification, sustainable industries, and most importantly, equitable and resilient growth and workforce development. So this is a really strong emphasis on engagement, equity, and resilience in a very large grant proposal. CERF funding right now is organized into 2 phases. The first phase, each region across the state is guaranteed one $5 million phase 1 planning grant. A second phase will open up about a year after the first phase that will enable us to compete with other regions across the state for a total pot of $500 million. It may go without saying, but this is a lot of money, especially for planning. Planning grants are usually in the hundreds of thousands of dollars range, not in the millions of dollars. So this is a really big opportunity to bring a broad set of partners together to tackle really large problems. And the goal the state has been very explicit about is that they want to see this money not just stand alone, but to help leverage federal infrastructure funds. There's a $1.2 trillion of funding available through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, and many other sources of related funds available. So if you can go to the next slide, Karen, please. The CERF is being organized in an interesting way and in a new way for the state. The state is divided up into 13 regions, and our region is the southern border region, which consists of Imperial County and San Diego County. You'll see from the map on this slide that some other regions have even bigger challenges than our region might, where they are collections of 5 or 6 or more counties. What makes this interesting is that only regions are allowed to apply. So there can be no independent applications from a unit other than a region. And each region is guaranteed, like I said, to get that $5 million phase 1 planning grant in order to produce a really thoughtful roadmap for economic recovery and transition. And I think this is a really exciting opportunity, and it's one that the state is trying to connect to a variety of other efforts. So if you move to the next slide. Well, what I want to really emphasize going into these breakout discussions and the conversation with all of you that we're starting today is that there's been lots of chatter around the state about CERF and a lot of really well-founded excitement. And like Roque mentioned, that started in late 2021. But the process of developing this grant opportunity has been a moving target at the state level. So originally, this was supposed to be a grant that was released in the early part of this year with a very, very quick turnaround for regions to apply. Between January and March was the original time frame. That time frame has been shifting over the last several months. And where we stand now is we're reaching out to all of you just as the timeline has been officially set, where there's a clear set of planning guidelines and a solicitation for proposals. And you'll see on the right-hand side of this slide that we are in May 2022, and there is a planning phase solicitation that's been released with guidance on what regions can apply for and the goals of the program, and a clear deadline for submitting proposals, which is near the end of July of this year. So we're at the beginning of a 2.5 to 3 month window for really doing deep regional outreach and coordination to build up a joint bi-county proposal for submission in July. And each region will be notified about awards in the fall of this year. And that sets the running room for a 2-year planning phase and a 4+ year implementation phase. So I'll keep moving through this, and please don't hesitate to post any questions about CERF itself in the chat. We're happy to circle back for those. So next slide. So now that the planning schedule and the grant application timeline and schedule have been set, the state has also released really strong direction about what it takes to build a good regional proposal and team, which they're calling these regional collaboratives. And there's a really strong emphasis that all CERF collaboratives across the state needs to be composed of a diverse and balanced set of partners. And so what you'll see here on this slide are, in alphabetical order, no order of priority, the types of partners that the state is emphasizing as being essential for participation in collaborative proposals. And those include business groups, communities, educational institutions, governments and regional agencies, labor groups, tribes, philanthropy, and more. One of the things I want to really call out here, which is unusual about CERF, is that government agencies are not allowed to apply directly. They can be part of collaboratives or coalitions, but they may not be their own applicants. And so that creates a really strong frame for community, business, and educational institution leadership in collaboration with all of these other stakeholders. And that's an extraordinary opportunity. And so that's the point at which I want to pass this back to Roque. We'll pause for a moment if there are any specific clarification questions around CERF. I don't see anything in the chat. So Roque, back over to you.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Shalini, for that overview of CERF. And so I just wanted to mention a little bit about, I talked earlier about these steps about staying informed, getting ready, and applying. And so just a little bit of the work that's been done. Our work at the Imperial Valley Wellness Foundation is about identifying resources and hopefully being able to work collectively to bring additional resources to the Imperial Valley. And so that's why CERF was so important to us. In October, as I mentioned earlier in my opening comments, that we learned about this funding opportunity to be announced. And so in November of 2021, Imperial Valley Wellness Foundation, along with the Imperial Valley Economic Development Corporation, attended the California Economic Summit in Monterey to help folks. Was a training on how to prepare us for the grant process. And so then, as Shalini mentioned, these 13 regions, including the Southern Border region, were identified. And so we started conversations to make sure that Imperial County was at the forefront of the information and that we stayed informed about this opportunity. And we learned, early on that it would require a strong relationship with San Diego County. And so we expanded those conversations, with the assistance of Cal Forward and the EDCs to include San Diego in those conversations. And so now Shalini and I have been co-convening a bi-county group to hopefully help us all get to this process of developing this joint bi-county proposal. Next slide there, Karen, please. So, oops, I think moving forward, yeah. So, so we have been, as I said, in this stage of staying informed and somewhat getting ready. We've been listening to community members, nonprofits, and organizations, but our goal is really about listening, engagement, outreach, and as I mentioned earlier, really about equity and inclusion as these guiding principles and values around how we move forward, how we get ready, and how we eventually apply for the funding. So we really looked at, as we're looking at this work and the community vision for this at sort of these three levels, right? Awareness. We want folks to know, what we are doing, what is going on, and we want people to participate in ways that match their priorities and availability. And more importantly is that we're looking for ownership, that you feel that this process is equitable and the outcome represents your needs, right? And so that's why, this session today is really important to us. We want to bring your voice and your visibility to this process. There's still a lot of work to be done. We don't have, all the answers. And as I mentioned, earlier, there was some work that had been done due to some, deadlines that were in place. But now that those have been extended, we really feel like this is a fresh start and opportunity to engage all of you in that process in the way that feels comfortable to you. And again, this is our opportunity to learn from you and to find ways to make this process a lot more inclusive and equitable, for all of you. And so we're open to hearing those thoughts and ideas that you have. And so go to the next slide there, Karen. And so what we're going to be moving into now are into these breakout sessions. And one of the focuses of CERF is really, which I really applaud, is around economy, environment, and equity. And if you want to find out more about CERF, there's a link here, and we'll send you this information, and we'll also send you, this PowerPoint presentation as well, so you'll have access to all of that. So as I mentioned today, we're really asking for your help for us to really get ready and to apply eventually for the CERF grant or funding. So we'll be asking you we'll ask you a couple of, in your groups, as soon as we'll put you in those groups, we're asking you for your help in answering a few questions, and we didn't want to give you too many questions, but please feel free to go where you need to go with your group. And so the questions that we have is, what is the most effective planning process you have been involved with? Because I know there's a lot of processes already out there. People might, probably have some that have worked that they feel have been inclusive and equitable. And we want to make sure if you have that and you've seen that already, to please share that with us. And then what recommendations do you have about what the CERF planning process should include? And so, so before we put you into these and you'll randomly be put into a breakout group, if we didn't self-select any specific groups, but we just thought that would happen randomly. But we will ask you though to please, from your group, identify a volunteer that wants to serve, one as the facilitator and another one as the reporter, right? Because we will come back and ask each group to give a brief report out on their discussions. And again, once again, we didn't want to assign facilitators or reporters because we wanted to make sure that your group felt, as comfortable as possible in moving this forward. And so, I don't know, Shalini, anything else before we go out into the breakout groups?
Yeah, just one comment to respond to Daniela's comments in the chat. I think CERF is the process that the state has unfolded over the last few months has really, I think, pushed regions to work in new ways. And so what you're hearing from me and what you're hearing from Roque is a desire to really listen and engage with folks at all levels. So, my organization in San Diego County, we are a policy organization, and so we work with community organizations, but we recognize that there's an enormous amount of activity at the grassroots that's important to connect to CERF, and that will take more than just this conversation. And so, for folks who are bringing deep community experience, that's what these breakouts are for, is to actually raise priorities. And on the conversations in San Diego, we've been very clear about making sure that CERF isn't a space where folks who have ready projects should get ahead of really deep community needs. And so understanding how we create space for bringing forward needs and ideas and generating projects is very, very important. So Daniela, I just want to thank you for your comment and hope that we get to explore that in the breakout and in the Q&A that follows.
Great, thank you for that. Yes, and thank you for those questions. And so I guess, Karen, you'll now be taking us into the breakout rooms.
While we're all waiting to be magicked into breakout rooms, I will continue to encourage you to please put questions into the chat so we can track, and we would love to follow up on anything individually as well. So if your question isn't answered, please don't hesitate to reach out to Roque and to me.
It looks like some of you are going into breakout rooms now, and you'll be about 20 minutes in your breakout room.
Hi, Tyler and Stella, did you not get into a breakout room?
Hi, Karen. Yes, I did. I was put into a breakout room. However, because I'm with a state agency, I just came back to the main room as I shouldn't be giving the opinion. I just kind of want to keep myself informed.
Oh, very good. Okay, I just wanted to be sure I wasn't slacking on my job.
Not at all. I think I was probably one of the first ones. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Well, you're joining us in about 15 minutes then, right?
Yes, I'm just here on standby.
Perfect. Okay.
Thank you, Karen, for checking in.
Yep.
Great. Well, welcome back all to the main room. It looks like everybody is back in. And so what we're going to go ahead and do is then take some time now to have folks report out. And so we ask you to please be brief. And I did ask folks, if you do have, I know you can't report on all of your conversation because we'd be here, all morning doing that or afternoon. And so if you do have additional notes that you would like to send our way, please do that, and we will document all of that information. So I'm not sure who are the reporters, but what I will ask is that if you put your hand up, I'll start with Stacy Chandler, who I know is the reporter for the group that I was in, and then if I could see hands go up as to the other reporters for the groups, that would be helpful. So Stacy, will you start us out?
Yes, Rocky, I'm happy to do that. Thank you so much. We had a really great group. I was happy to participate in it. And some of the key components I think that were really important in regards to what is the most effective planning process that you have been involved with. We had some that have been very involved. We had some, like myself, who were new at this and here learning and observing and just trying to take all that we can. But something that was a common component, I believe, in our group was that communication amongst one another who are in the planning process is key, that we need to make sure to set goals, set boundaries, set some rules. Some really thought that visuals are very important and very easy to understand. In that understanding, we need to always do not assume that everybody knows what you're talking about, who to talk to, and what everything is about, because there's so many new organizations and new people that need to learn. So communication, connection, and engagement with your communities and finding out where the needs are is something that was very important in the planning process, and that everybody is working together with a common goal and with common visions. What would you recommend about the planning process, what it should include? One of the things that was very important in our group, again, was that community engagement and to be sure to hear the unheard voices. Listen to the smaller organizations and groups. And when it comes to the grant writing and help, make sure that it's not so difficult and cumbersome that it makes it just really difficult for those who maybe don't have a professional grant writer, or your smaller organizations, that they're not able to participate and to receive some of the funds. And we also expressed a concern in our area for medical concerns. There's a field of cancer and medical issues with obesity, and just people needing health skills, life skills, and learning new ways, breaking dysfunctional cycles for families in our communities, and just helping our communities be the best that they can be.
Great.
That's
Thank
my
you.
report.
Thank you so much, Stacy. I really appreciate the next hand that I saw go up. And sorry if I didn't see yours at the same time, but I did see Vincent go up first. And so Vincent.
Sure. Be happy to echo pretty much everything that was already stated, and probably what most of us are going to repeat after me. Our group came together and really realized that what we could benefit from is improvement in the scaffolding and the infrastructure of the community. Getting fresh water to more people, getting power to more people as we approach the heat of summer, bringing internet and broadband to more homes and communities. We are, what are we, 55 people here, and we're all connected over internet from offices. How many of us in remote communities can do the exact same thing? How is this going to give us a long-term benefit if we're bringing in a broadband connection to this community? What can we leverage these resources for long-term to provide, not just for the short-term employment of like what we saw with the solar panels and the wind turbines, but keep those people around for the long term? How do we adapt education to keep those people who graduate in the community? How do we provide for all these new workers who may come to the community for either lower cost housing or more industry, as with lithium or post-COVID resources? We just need to think about where we want to be in 3, 5, 10 years and start planning to reach that goal and objective. And what can we do in between? We all serve the community. We all serve it in different ways, and we're all trying to make it better. But being able to provide those core services should help the whole community and allow us to all benefit in the long run. And I think I'll close it there.
Thank you for that report, Vincent. Really appreciate it. The person that I have next to me that showed up is Jessica Barlow.
Hi, sure. So I think our group echoed a lot of what was already shared. We discussed how both in terms of the planning process and recommendations, the goals should be that we are aligned on the greatest needs, but also aligned on goals, representing some of the smaller voices as well, as someone had just said. That it should be data driven, the work should be data driven, and that the community input engagement should be part of the process from the start, but also continue throughout the process. And I'll leave it there.
Great, thank you for that, Jessica. And then I see Antonio.
Good morning. Yeah, I want to give thanks to our team of Carl and Sal and Dr. Edwards. It was a great conversation. And just what Jessica mentioned right now, data-driven. We talked about having a needs assessment approach to the community, and that needs assessment needs to bring people to the fold. And that it needs to be built on some type of not expensive digital system that we could compare that data and have it and share it and use it to make those decisions. In other words, we need to figure out why we're going to do it, who's going to benefit from this, the who, what, and why. That was a conversation we had. Now, we did get into a little bit of what we would do with allocations, and just so the other groups, I think some of that was shared already, Roque. Transportation was at the crux of that, access to things. I think a lot of us were having that conversation and across this. But this data-driven approach, this needs assessment for our community, it ultimately needs to say, hey, you know what, at the end of this, if we're going to allocate this type of funding for something later down the road, then what benefit is it going to have for the people of Imperial County? How is it going to help small business? How is it going to help healthcare? How is it going to help people stay here and flourish here? That's the conversation we had.
Sorry, I was muted there. Thank you, Antonio, for that. And then I also see up there, Rosa Diaz.
Yes, hi. We started off the conversation with the question, and the question that came up in group was, what does equity mean? How do you interpret that? How, you know, or how do you define it? And so we took some time, getting into the word, but my definition could be different than yours. So I think that one of the things that is very important is to make sure that we understand the words, we know what they mean, or how do we want to define the word. Equity is a big word. It's a word. Equity, inclusion, they're words that are being used right now. So speaking from my personal experience working with the population I work with, I can tell you where I see those needs. I didn't even think about transportation. I thought more about mental health, drug abuse, and domestic violence. Why? Because that is what I deal with. That's a population I'm working with. So again, how do we make it, equitable when it comes to working with the diverse population of Imperial County? What might work for some of our population may not work for some of your population. So I think that it would be nice to start off making sure that we're all using the same definition for some of the conversations or some of the words that we use so that we can move forward, because how you see it and how I see it could be very different. So that's just the thought and something that came up in our group.
Thank you very much for that, Rosa. Yeah, very, very important. Definitely agree with you. And so then I also see up there Hortensia.
Yes, hi, good afternoon, everyone, or still morning. Good morning, everyone. You know, we had an awesome team, which was really good, was that we were a really diverse group. We had Sean, Irma, and Shailene, if I said it right. And you know what we were talking about is that we really need to stop working in silos. And when I mean silos, it could be the business, it could be a nonprofit agency, it could be whatever, but we continue to work in silos. And if we really want to make a difference, we really need to be working as Imperial County. And yes, you know, we each represent either a city or whatever agency. So there's a lot of expertise out there. There's a lot of resources. So we need to be able to work together. And you know, it's not so much that we're going to commingle our funds, but there's no reason why we cannot share our resources, share our expertise, even somehow pitch in with funds. And what we were talking about is that we need to really get our residents to be able to work. It's either our youth out into the workforce or our residents out into the workforce. And how are we going to do that? By building career ladders. And how do we do that? Is first that we need to know what the skill sets are that our workforce needs. It's, you know, knowing what our local industry is, what are our businesses out there, even what are our agencies and resources that are out there, and we need to work together. Our businesses with our higher education in Imperial Valley, we have IVC and we have San Diego State Ivy campus. Then we work with our local high schools, making sure that our students, you know, come out with, you know, credits from the university. Maybe hopefully every single high school student comes out in the career path certification or with an AA. So that's an example of how we can work together and not work in silos. And then all the other businesses out there or even agencies out there, then the way that you can help out is allowing our adults and our youth to go into your practices to be able to do internships and to be able to get them ready for what you need them when you hire them. So those were really some of the examples that we talked about how we can work together to make a difference for our whole Imperial, all our residents of Imperial County. So those were some of the ideas. So I don't know if I missed anything, Sean, Irma, or Shailene, but I think that was our concept that we had.
Thank you so much for the report, Hortensia. I really appreciate it. The next person I see up there, Alessandra.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. We also had a really great conversation. Our group was also diverse, and we did speak about our individual focus areas, which ranged from economic development, broadband, workforce, education, community resources, small business services, small business advocacy. So we did have all of those different aspects that we wanted to come together, which we already knew, but we discussed do have this comprehensive bottom line approach that's necessary to come together for our community and for this initiative. A lot of what we talked about kind of came back to the same ideas that we have heard just now. First, education about what this initiative is, who is leading this initiative, and why, and that background, so that the community is aware, so that all of us are aware of how we can work together, and all of the leadership involved that we can trust. The second thing was the focus on outreach, and making sure that we have input from different sectors, from the public sector, from private sector, from small to large organizations, from community members that are hard to reach, that just because they're hard to reach does not mean we don't need their input. We absolutely do. And the third was really the access to this conversation in the first place. And a big part of that might be ways that we can diversify how we're having these conversations, whether they're in person or over Zoom. That things like that to diversify can really benefit the growth in the conversation and the community that's being involved. And I believe that's really the three main focuses that we kept going back to. And although there's so much to discuss, those seem to be at the core for all of us involved in our group.
Great, Alessandra, thank you for that. I have the next three that I have Katie, Mark, and Susan. And so if I didn't name you and you are a reporter, please let me know by putting your hand up, and we'll go in that order then. Katie, Mark, and then Susan. So Katie.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Barrow. So in our group, we had a great discussion around planning, and we talked about the difficulty in previous planning experience, the difficulty for getting the general population out to provide their input. And so we talked about meeting folks where they are in their daily routine, whether that's at church or at a recreation center, at schools, but really trying to be intentional about meeting folks where they are instead of trying to draw them out to where we are, so that it can be an easier facilitation of feedback. We also talked about defining or having very clear messaging around the mission of this group and the intent for trying to gather information, so that when we start to talk about equity and tough conversations, that we are all in agreement, or as many of us as possible in agreement, what the mission is and what the overall purpose is. So bringing a consensus so that we can all work together and try not to devour each other. And then that'll bring some legitimacy to the work and some weight to the work as well. We talked a little bit about, after we talked about the planning process, we talked a little bit about needs that we could identify within our group. And we did touch on the need for increased workforce development, and really with a focus on healthcare with the nursing, and knowing that we have a critical nurse shortage in Imperial County. We also touched on economy, entrepreneurial activities, and supporting entrepreneurs, looking at the nexus of having the job and how that affects your health and how it affects your ability to live here in the county. So we did touch on several different ideas as well as the planning. And then lastly, we did talk about preparing. How we prepare now will set us up for success in the longevity of this whole project. So preparing, making sure we do all the groundwork and preparing folks now for future opportunities.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Katie. And then Mark.
Thanks, Rocky. I'm just going to build on some comments that I heard from Rosa and another gentleman. As she mentioned, she focuses on domestic violence victims, but there are others that fall outside of that, and that could be members from the LGBTQ community and their need, and all of their needs for drug treatment and mental health, and not just for the clients themselves, but also their families. And so, and obviously the end result is that there's a need for funding. And so I think the planning process that I think that we could embark on is to help identify, what those challenges are, and then make a case for funding proposals in our next phase of phases of efforts to acquire funding. Anything you want to add to that, Rosa?
No, thank you for bringing that up. But yes, like I said earlier, you know, we see a need depending the population that we work with. But I do think that some of the issues can be, we can narrow it down if we know where the root of the problem is. So yeah, it takes conversation and assessments. Thank you.
Great. And it looks like the final one that we have is Susan, and then we will go to some question and answer period. And so if you have, please, any questions, please make sure that they're in the chat. Go ahead, Susan.
Okay, thank you. A little tough here, being last, trying to not repeat everyone. So in my group had me, Sarah Lehman, Megan Thomas, and Camila Garcia. So we had a really rich perspective. And to answer, we're all on the same page, so that's great. To answer the first question was, you know, what were some of the engagement, the most effective process you've been involved in? So for us, it was like the census, when that was, you know, implemented, and then the IVCCC, the continuum of care, becoming more of a formal charter, transition from Catholic Charities to Imperial County Department of Social Service being the administrative entity. That's just we could really learn a lot. And then also the Alliance Healthcare Foundation creating the chapter here. So those are the things that we can really learn a lot from that type of processes. So second, what recommendations do you have about the planning process should include? So I'm going to try to be a little more specific and not try to repeat too much and duplicate. Yes, very important not working in silos. We talked about that, and what part of that is not so much not valuing and appreciating our differences, and that there's an important reason why we have silos, because of our expertise, our different missions, our different compliances and things of that nature. But it's about building bridges. So we could maybe, that's it, because we understand, you know, that it's important to have, to not lose sight of what we're doing directly, but it's learning how to build bridges with each other, not just mindset, but actually applying that. And then the engagement part, like everyone said, it is important to get the different feedback, perspective. And so we should also use the uniqueness of our border community, understanding that Mexicali is a large part of our economic growth in the Imperial Valley, you know, whether it's spending dollars here or the workforce. So we should capture their perspective. But the other thing is engagement. So yes, go to the stakeholders, which includes the general community. And part of that could be done with actually using incentives, like the city of Calexico actually did surveys, and we talked about data driven. So that's important. We need some data. We can't just have it all be anecdotal. So surveys would be great, and using incentives. So, and then last, what we want to touch on is it's great for us to have this process, and I know we have a short timeline. And with the engagement, maybe with a group of 50 of us, maybe an idea could be that one person, each one of us commit to reaching out to some agency or other group, you know, in person, that we could really we could work really quick that way. And the last part, if we're going to have a process, because we're talking about process here, data driven, I think it's important that we have a concept of a feedback loop, that we're constantly measuring, monitoring, and evaluating what we're doing for this process and being accountable, and then having an opportunity to adjust as we go, because we know things don't always go according to plan, or they're not perfect, or we might forget something. So a feedback loop is really important. And then, and again, everything else, we pretty much are in line with what everyone else has stated before.
Great, thank you so much for that, Susan. And I think that I have gotten, of all the reporters, I think have reported. I don't see any other hands up there as reporters. And if you are, please let me know, through the chat that we forgot you. But I think we've covered everybody. Again, I want to thank all of you for reporting out. I really appreciate all the thoughts and the ideas and the thoughtfulness, you know, and I heard a lot about, you know, we need to define equity, right? And we need to make sure we're not working in silos. And so anyway, there's a lot of great thoughts and ideas. And as some of you mentioned, you never thought about a specific sector or area or topic of work. And so that's, I think, why we're trying to be as inclusive as possible to make sure that we can bring as many folks to the table to identify all of these areas that need to be included. So I will, so one of the first questions, because we're getting close on time, and I want to make sure that that we take some of those questions. But before I move on to that, Shalini, is there anything else that you want to say before I move into the questions?
Please go ahead, Roque.
Okay, great. Okay, so one of the first questions I saw in Shalini or Karen or Carl or whoever else, if I miss any questions, please let me know. One of them was, you know, why do we think the Ivy Wellness Foundation is well positioned to lead a process of equity for the region? You know, I want to mention that, you know, one is for me, it's an honor and a pleasure to be able to do this. One of the reasons is that's a pleasure and honor is because I was born and raised in the Imperial Valley, and you know, have a lot of my family that still lives there. And so it's been really important for me to be able to come back to the Imperial Valley to lead the Imperial Valley Wellness Foundation. And my career has been in the nonprofit field and in philanthropy for over around 30 years now. All of my work during that time has been around bringing the voice of the community at all levels to the tables, to the not only to the planning tables, but to the decision-making tables. And I think that is one critical thing, you know, that I am really committed to. You know, since I've been here, it's been around voice and visibility, and especially voice and visibility for those that are historically have not been engaged or been represented. And so, you know, we need a lot of help in doing this work. I mean, that's why we're reaching out to all of you, and we thank you for being here. And we're looking for, you know, many different ways. I know some of you have mentioned, you know, make sure, which is one of the goals or one of our values, is go to where the people are, right? Don't make them come to you. We know that this is just one venue, right? This Zoom is one venue, but it's not the only way or the best way to communicate and engage with folks. There's got to be multiple ways of doing that. And that's why we're asking for your help to do that. We also have funding available to make sure, because we know that, you know, there's a lot of great agencies out there that are already doing really good work, you know, when it comes to bringing the voice of the community at all levels to the table. And so we want to support them in continuing to do some of that work to make sure that those voices, that your constituency, you all have your own, you know, constituencies and so forth, want to make sure that those constituencies are here at the table as well, not only in the planning, but in the decision making as well. And like I said in earlier on, you know, we're getting ready, and then we want to apply, right? And we need everybody's help, you know, to make sure that we can be as inclusive and as equitable as possible. So I want to thank you for that question. And then,
Okay, may I add to that briefly?
Sure, please go ahead.
I think it's important that from San Diego County that I make very clear that you all have my personal commitment and a whole group of organizations that have been engaged on CERF from San Diego to acknowledge that we all know what equity doesn't look like, and the history between San Diego County and Imperial County is a fantastic model of what equity does not look like. And so I will be very upfront about saying that, and saying that we are working together, and it's a privilege to be working alongside Roque on this to try to correct that. And so I've heard from many of you the past joint work that has led to, you know, population weighted trickles of funding to Imperial County. That's not what we're trying to do here with this coalition. And so you have my personal commitment, and that runs deep, to be engaged and make sure that we don't repeat those past mistakes. And so I ask for your patience as we learn how to do better on this one. And please don't hesitate to come to me personally with that, because I'm new to this role, but I do see it as a privilege to work with Roque and to work with you all, and to make sure that we know what equity looks like in practice, not just what it doesn't look like. Back to you, Roque.
Great. Okay, so let's see, we're down to the last 4 minutes. So I want to make sure that we talk a little bit about the path forward and next steps. And so I know that we have, Karen, I think there's a last slide that we might be able to show here. Yes. So again, today was this Imperial Dialogue. It's not the last one. It's not the only mechanism that we will use. I promise you that. And so please, again, even after this, I ask everybody, please, any other thoughts that you have, other ways and methods that we need to think about to be more inclusive and equitable, please share those with us. May 4th, tomorrow, there's a San Diego convening, just like we had here today, but the focus being on the San Diego folks. And so you're happy to join us for that if you'd like as well. And then May 5th, the Southern California Guidelines Workshop. Please register here. It'll be very helpful information on the releasing the guidelines for the CERF proposal. And so we welcome all of you to participate on that workshop. We are working on a website that's and should be up hopefully within the next couple of days. And we ask you, and we'll send out information, links to that website. We ask you to sign up to participate in different ways and to continue to share your priorities and ideas. And then 2 weeks from now, we will update you about another Zoom session, right? We want to continue to stay engaged with you and to keep you informed. And again, please feel free to reach out with any questions that you have. And then the week of May the 23rd is the planning phase solicitation will be released. And then the week of July 25th, the proposal is a proposal submission deadline. So I want to make sure that you all have that. And I think there are, Carl just dropped in a link for that workshop. And then I don't know if there's a link, Shalini, is there a link for folks if they want to participate in the San Diego convening?
Yep, we'll make sure to share that with the whole Zoom list and forward the invitation.
Great, great. Okay, well, I like to start on time and I like to end on time. And so we actually have 2 minutes, which I'm really excited about, that we actually can end 2 minutes early. And I really want to thank all of you for your participation today. We look forward, for your continuous participation. We look forward for you to keep us, accountable and responsible to an equitable and inclusive process. And again, please feel free to reach out. And thank you once again to all of you. And I hope that you have a wonderful afternoon. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.